Mercedes-Benz has a lot riding on the GLC. This compact crossover is the #1 selling car that they sell in the United States, so it has to keep delivering on size, price, and especially the wow factor. And that wow factor for 2024 is this car, the AMG GLC 43, which is a 4-cylinder engine instead of the 6, and there's no more V8 anymore. What's it got? A Formula One derived turbocharger, electric turbocharger that Mercedes says is delivering all kinds of output, emissions lowered, all of these wonderful specs. So does it actually deliver? And should you pay more for the 43 versus the 300? Let's find out. The GLC was completely redesigned for 2023, but now it's the AMG models for 2024 and thereon where the big changes happen. Instead of V6 and V8s, there's now a single 2-liter turbo inline-4 and soon a plug-in hybrid version. And for enthusiasts, well, is it really the answer? This new GLC gets rid of some of the lumps and bumps that I was looking at in the outgoing GLC that made that one, from some angles, look slightly frumpy. But now, whether it's 300 or this AMG 43, it's just a lot more well-rounded. The whole shape is already rounded, but it's just better overall. Even the back tailgate has more of a rake to it, so it's not as blunt. It's a good-looking car. It almost looks like a little hot hatch to me, and it sounds like one too. And even the rear wheels also turn up to 2.5 degrees when you're parking, and they also go in tandem at higher speeds. Still, the turning circle in this car, not as good as it might seem, but that's because the tires are so wide. This stance, absolutely love it on the AMG. It is lowered, not an air suspension. As you see it, this is just how it's riding. Excellent. I love the look on it. And in the front, you will know it's an AMG 43 by the vertical chrome grille. You're gonna see the new, more open air intakes on the bottom. And of course, the back has that rear diffuser and the quad exhaust. And especially these wheels, you get that nice little inner ring effect. 20s come standard. I don't even think you need the 21s because these ride well enough as it is, and they grip. These Bridgestone Potenzas fill up the wheel wells plenty. Lighting has always been a signature part of Mercedes-Benz, and now when you unlock or start the car, you're seeing animations projected in front of you. You can change those animations on the touchscreen. It's kind of cheesy a little bit, like I obviously know I'm driving a Mercedes, but it projects that to everyone else, and it also does some safety alerts projected in front of you on the road while you're driving. Certain car-to-X communication features are available. Most likely, you're not going to see any because it's still in its infancy. The GLC is more generic from behind because it doesn't have a giant Mercedes star right up in the front grille. But as you see it here, it's hunkered down a lot like the new GLE. From behind here, the fenders swell. The tires on this AMG model are 295 millimeters in the back. They nicely jut out. They also have a new rear diffuser with quad exhaust tips, and the taillights look clean. On other Mercedes models, the previous GLC especially, I don't think that every angle really looked the part. This one is just sleek all over. And while it can be kind of generic when you compare it to other SUVs, I'm really, well, I gotta say, really smitten with it now. The GLC cargo area is pretty tight for a vehicle this size. 22 cubic feet behind the seats and 56 when folded, but there is a saving grace. Remote folding rear seats, which isn't always a given, and when you do that, it actually powers that front passenger seat forward to clear the space, fold it back up, it goes back where it was. Here's your starting lineup. The GLC 300, a 2-liter turbo inline-4 with similar numbers as the outgoing generation, only now the fuel efficiency is way up. That's because there's a 48-volt mild hybrid system that takes a lot of energy off the engine, so you're saving some gas. But not with this one. This one is the AMG GLC 43. The numbers are barely changed from the old V6, but the horsepower is up. Torque is slightly down, and it's also a 2-liter turbo inline-4, but completely different than AMG's other models, such as the GLA 45. I'll show you what's actually under the hood in a minute, but before you see that, know that the all-wheel drive on the AMG is sending more power all the time to those rear wheels versus the standard GLC 300. And the transmission on here is also vastly different. They're both 9 speeds, but they don't work the same way. The Formula One tech is underneath this engine cover. It's an electric turbocharger that uses an electric motor between the turbine and the compressor. Powers up to 6 kilowatts, which is quite a lot. And it differs from other Mercedes mild hybrid engines with an electric supercharger because this is still using a regular turbo's exhaust gas, but it doesn't need the gas all the time. So when you're off the throttle, for example, it'll keep those blades spinning to keep the boost up. That's what you want in a performance engine, and that's what Mercedes uses to some extent in Formula One. The colors, the textures, the shapes, it's pretty futuristic and forward-looking. I like that, but not everything inside this new GLC is as good as it looks. The quality of the leather and the leatherette across the dash and the seats, that's all fine, but a lot of parts aren't anymore. For example, this center console used to be a beautiful one-piece sweep of wood or carbon fiber. Even though there's a touchscreen in here, it's now just kind of this generic black plastic that scratches easy. And the wood that's here, really hollow, feels thin and fake. Here, this plastic piece never used to be there. It looks cool, but this is honestly hardware I'd find out of a new Kia. Kia is fine, but at Mercedes prices, I expect a lot more. Even like the door pulls, for example. They used to be padded. It's beautiful to look at here, but when you touch it, it doesn't feel right. Even the lower door pockets, those used to be nice and padded. It's really hard plastic. And for these prices, I'm sorry, when you're going from one model generation to the next, you shouldn't be cutting corners like this. Ambient lighting on a new Mercedes, that's legendary. If you change the passenger zone temperature, it changes the color of the passenger side vent. And it does so many other things. It's just pretty. As a regular SUV, there's plenty of room. These seats are very comfortable. There's optional performance seats that are even more hip-hugging. They're like one-piece bucket seats like you'd find in a Porsche. And there's also the GLC Coupe, which completely cuts the rear roofline. The engine might be smaller, but the sound sure isn't. Neither is the speed. Not quite as satisfying as the old V6 or a V8, but for what this is in this price category, it's a very, very complex engine that works pretty well. And I like that little blat. I do, I'm a sucker for stuff like that. You can quiet this car down, but never too much, even in comfort mode. You're always having to talk a little louder than you would in a GLC 300. I like the sound, but this reminds me more of the Acura Integra Type S than the AMG 43s that I'm used to, because that had a beautiful sounding 6-cylinder engine, absolutely melodious and just so perfect. This isn't horrible, but it's just weird because this is the sound I was associating with the GLAs, the CLAs, the 45s with that really high pressure turbo. But this engine is now completely different and it's not at all relatable. While the sound takes a few steps back, the handling does not. This car is glued to the ground. I absolutely love the chassis. You got the summer tires here. All seasons are a no-cost option, but keep the summers. Because with the four-wheel steering, with the back wheels turning in tandem with the fronts, it's sharp. And the steering actually has 3 different modes of variable ratios on it, so it never feels like you're turning too quickly. And with some four-wheel steering systems, there's a sense that as soon as you turn the wheel, it's actually kind of oversteering the car more than you intended. Not here at all, it feels very fluid. But considering the performance suspension that we're on, it's not bad. Previous AMG 43 model years from like say 2018, 2019, everything was overly stiff. If you were in a GLC, a C-Class, and E-Class. And a few years after that, Mercedes corrected that, so it's no longer feeling absurdly firm. This is now just, I would say, acceptably firm. If ride comfort and day-to-day tranquility are your thing, you should get the regular GLC 300, not the 43, because the 43 truly is an AMG. It's really no longer that in-between model between the base and the 63. This one really feels set up the same way. It just doesn't go as fast as the 63. So in addition to the rougher ride, there's rougher shifts. So again, if you're planning on commuting in your GLC 43 and you just want the badge, you should think again. And here's why. Instead of a regular torque converter on most automatic transmissions, that's what gives you that nice smooth feel when shifting, when getting off the line at low speeds. This is rougher, and it's done that way on purpose. What this transmission does, it combines the elements of a dual clutch gearbox, which is more like a manual transmission with separate clutches, basically is like an automated manual gearbox in many ways, and a traditional automatic. So they get rid of the torque converter. Instead, they have a multi-clutch pack, similar to what you'd find, say, on a limited slip differential, and that's attached to the input shaft. And what that does is, yes, it provides rougher shifts, but it's more direct feeling. That means the engine is directly connected to the transmission at all times, and it can really apply maximum power and have very fast shifts, just like a dual clutch. But this transmission in higher specs, say like the 63, can handle more torque than a dual clutch would. So that's why Mercedes-AMG went this route. And they also did it so then when I'm in 7th gear and I immediately put my foot down, I'm skipping from 7 to 3. And that's not something that a dual clutch gearbox can do just as quickly. This engine is just very complicated, and it doesn't actually improve acceleration or response, which is odd because that electric turbo, there's a motor in between the turbine and the compressor that Mercedes says provides up to 6 kilowatts of power. That's a lot. And that's why it has that mild hybrid system. But despite that, and despite the fact that it can spin this thing up to 170,000 RPM and keep that turbo essentially spinning when I'm off the gas, in most situations when I'm in Sport Plus, it doesn't feel truly like it's accelerating any quicker than the old car. So technically, yeah, it's amazing, right? It's derived from Formula One. Truly is. It's hand-me-down technology. But in practice, it's not really doing anything more, and it's not giving you greater efficiency. It's roughly the same as the old V6. It's also emitting the same emissions. If you look at the EPA's website, it's just a few grams down per mile of CO2. So it's not any more efficient, it's not any more environmentally friendly, and it's a whole lot more complex. I don't know about you, but long term, I don't want to be servicing or maintaining this engine. But today I'm not really concerned about reliability, it's just the fun. But when you put it in Sport Plus, love that little blip. You're getting the ride you paid for. This is why you buy an AMG. Like, it's really dialed in as a car, truly is. Lowered like this, it almost feels like it's a little hot hatch. And that used to be the Mercedes GLA's job, especially with this high-powered AMG 4-cylinder turbo. Now the GLC is taking over, and it's just a better car all around, so forget about the GLA 45. If you're gonna get something with a Turbo 4 in it, and it has to be Mercedes, it's now this one. That's the one you want. Grip and turn-in are just really excellent. Just like point, go, stop. It's all very immediate, and this is not the 63. But they're 14.6 inch wide, brake rotors in the front, 4 pistons, they're strong. This car is actually very impressive. The engine might not be the most impressive feature, but the chassis sure as hell is. There's an 11.9 inch touchscreen with 2 different home modes. Now I like this one, it shows the map above in a really rudimentary view, nice and simple, carousel of icons with some most used features below here. Or if you press and hold home screen, you get what's called zero layer. It always shows the navigation, and then it shows things below that the car thinks that you're going to be using most often. Kind of like this, but to be honest, I don't really want to see the nav constantly, especially not on a screen this size. And the graphics, as you'd expect from Mercedes, excellent. The climate controls are always here. You have to use the menu to use things like to sync it or to change the fan direction, but otherwise generally easy to use. The only actual physical row of buttons here are for the cameras. Thankfully they are very good, as you'd expect. Vehicle settings, which you can also swipe down from the top of the screen. There's a fingerprint reader, which I'm not going to use, but it can store all your settings across multiple Mercedes models, and a volume slider here, which really is not quite as easy to use as a knob. Other neat features. If you go to the AMG app, you can see all types of things about your car because the turbo is the star-shining component of this whole car. But you can see the IWC watch. This is kind of a gimmick. If you actually own an IWC, you would not be using something like this. It's just kind of fun, I suppose. The off-road app is also unique, even though you would not take the AMG anywhere off-road. But a very cool feature is that it has an underbody camera. So as you're driving forward, the car will try to show you what's underneath the tires. Land Rover pioneered this first. I think that's pretty cool. But if you're trying to drive anywhere rocky with an AMG, you are going to set yourself up for a pretty bad time. Now, this GLC doesn't come with adaptive cruise control or even automatic steering. None of those things, because that's almost $2,000 in options that it doesn't have. But forward collision alert, that's standard. Blind spot, that's good, but for over 70 grand, you'd think you'd have those features as standard, but of course you don't. The system is quick, it's fast, it is also very overwhelming. There are so many features, so if you buy this car, you truly have to sit down, figure out where everything is, and then try not to have this system distract you when you're driving. The instrument panel has so many layouts, from understated, you can change the color on that one. Classic, this is my favorite because you can still cycle through everything you could possibly want right here in the center. That's how Mercedes always were. This one, to me, is truly the most user-friendly. For example, Super Sport and Sport. Yeah, that looks cool, but while you're driving, it's not really gonna do much. It's a crazy infographic. I do like the navigation in full screen. The assistance features, you can also just have it there. This car doesn't have them, but it would show them if it did. An off-road page, again, gimmicky here, but beautiful. And your dealer's favorite, the service page. And from here, you can also activate the head-up display and choose all the modes that you can select up here too. It's truly mind-boggling, but it is definitely easier to use than previous systems. Still, it requires a big learning curve. But this is Mercedes, so you're not done configuring. There's 4 different spokes on the steering wheel. This right one controls the touchscreen, which is kind of nice when you're driving. Or you can use this one. This controls the instrument panel and all those features. You got your cruise control, your volume and phone, and then these. And the AMGs, this is the drive mode selector. And you can also control it on the touchscreen and say, for example, I want to change the order. Whoops, hold on one second. I want to change the order. And if I don't want sport to come before comfort, I can drag that and change it. It changes this all by itself. I love that. You can also change the damper settings, transmission. The fact that there's screens within screens, it is, again, overwhelming, but it's fun to use after you've mastered it. The 2024 Mercedes-Benz GLC starts at $47,450. Adding 4MATIC is $2,000. The AMG GLC 43 starts at $64,950. As tested with the Pinnacle trim package, it was $73,170 with Destination. That's only a few grand more than the last GLC 300 we tested, which was fully loaded. And this one doesn't have the driver assistance features. There's a lot of competition. The BMW X3, Audi Q5, Volvo XC60, and the Genesis GV70. And all of those cars have base engines and higher performance engines like this AMG. Mercedes brings a whole lot of car, and for an actually decent price. But there's some things about it that just don't measure up to the previous generation. The new GLC is pretty good, but it's not great. Not great in the Mercedes-Benz sense of that term, of unrivaled interior quality, superior engines, and a look that you'd never find anywhere else. I think Mercedes-Benz is cutting back on some of its interior quality. I think they're going a little too far with technology, and the engines are just straight up overcomplicated and not delivering that amazing sound that we were all used to. But even so, even as the world changes, this car still, from the outside, still looks good, and it also delivers a pretty good value in the luxury segment. So it is loaded, it does deliver, but it's not quite everything that I'm expecting from a Mercedes-Benz. What do you think? Does that matter to you? And would you shop any other compact luxury SUV on the market? Tell us and go to CarGurus.com and subscribe to the YouTube channel where you'll see reviews like this all the time. We'll see you next time.